the way they are. The last thing is this title box. This is the best way to indicate what your sample is. You can put multiple lines of text in there if you want. It's better to indicate what your sample is in this title box rather than trying to edit the name over here. The reason is that this name is saved directly to the disk, and if you put in spaces or other characters that are not friendly with the Linux operating system, it can screw up the software. So unless you really know what you're doing, I recommend that you leave this alone and put all your identifying information in here. Okay, so once you've added the experiment, chosen the solvent, the experiment, the parameters, and the title, the next step is to click submit. This changes the status to being queued. That tells the instrument that you want to run the experiment. On the sample changer, this is actually the last step that you need to do. You can just make sure that your sample is in the correct folder, just the right experiment is queued, and then you can wait for it to automatically run. On the other instruments, the other walk-up instruments, there's another couple steps you need to do to actually tell the instrument that you want to run it. So what you need to do after you queue the experiment is go up to this run menu here and tell it that you want to do a new run. You'll also notice that there's an item here in the menu for manual lock and shim. It's disabled like it's showing right here. That means that it's not going to do manual lock and shim, that means it's going to do automatic lock and shim, which is fine. But if you want to manually lock and shim, make sure that it's enabled, the yellow box, before you start your run. So I'll leave it enabled so you can see how that works, but it's your choice whether you do it manually or automatically. So we will click new run. This window pops up, and unless you're doing more advanced experiments like variable temperature or something like that, you can just click start. And then the next step you'll see is a window will pop up that says click here to start ejector routine. So you can click OK. That will turn on the ejector. You can go over to the magnet. Now before you go over to the magnet, it's a good idea to remove your wallet and anything else that you might think could be harmed by a strong magnetic field. The 400 is a shielded magnet, so it's not quite as critical, but some of the higher field instruments are not shielded, so they could erase your credit cards or damage your cell phone or other electronics. So we're going to go over to the instrument. One rule we have on all the walk-up instruments is that we always keep a dummy sample inside the magnet. The purpose of this is to make sure that we don't try to put two samples in the magnet. So that means that when you click eject, if nothing pops up, don't assume that the instrument is empty. Assume that there's a sample stuck down inside the magnet. The worst thing that you can do, maybe not the worst, but the bad thing you can do, is to drop another sample in on top of the sample that's already in there. It can break, make a mess, and you know good. In this case, the sample popped up, so that's good. If nothing pops up, the next course of action is to contact Instrument Center staff, and if you can't find them, leave a note on the report problem link on the website. The dummy sample is just a tube of D2O, it's just a placeholder, and we're going to trade it out with our sample. So we'll go back over here, get our sample. You should know how to properly prepare your sample. It needs to be a reasonable height and in a good NMR tube. If the sample is too short, or if the tube is bad, or if there is debris in your sample, all of these things will cause poor resolution in your sample, and you'll get bad data. In this case, a reasonable height is typically 500 to 600 microliters. 600 is probably a good rule of thumb to use. You want to put it in the spinner, put the sample in the depth gauge, and push it down to the bottom. Now, if your sample is a little bit short, you may not want to push it all the way to the bottom, but rather center it on the center line right here. The reason for that is the only part of the sample that's being detected is this black bar here. It says receiver coil is a 5mm tube. This black bar here is the part of the sample that's actually being observed. Now, you might say, well, then I don't need the remaining parts of the sample. The reason you need the remaining parts of the sample, extending above and below, is when you put the sample into the magnetic field, the sample itself distorts the magnetic field. That distortion is fairly uniform in the middle, but it curves around kind of like a bar magnet on the ends. We need the ends to be far away from the part that we're observing. So that's why the sample needs to be taller than the part that we're observing. Now, because we're only observing this, if you make your sample really tall, you're not going to get any more signal than if it's a reasonable height. So there's no point in having too tall of a sample either. Once your sample is reasonable height, correct depth, maybe a good idea to wipe down the outside of the sample to make sure that there's no dirt or debris on the outside of the tube. You take it up here and put it into the magnet. It should float on top of the magnet. Then you can come back to the computer. And basically you can follow the instructions here. So it says, please insert your new sample on top of the magnet while the list is on. Click here when finished. So we've done that. We can click OK. Now if you chose it with automatic lock, automatic shim, then you can just sit back and wait, and it should take it through all of the steps. You can watch the little icon, that's why it's called icon NMR, flashing as it does each of the steps. So the first step that it's doing is it's spinning the sample. So look at the panel over here to see if the light is flashing, that means it's trying to spin, but it's not at the right spinning speed. Once it gets to the right spinning speed, the spin light should remain steady, and it should go on to the next step. So it did setting the default shim, and then it comes up here with the lock window. This is because we chose manual lock. Now I'm not going to go over manual locking. Normally you do not need to do manual locking. But if you do, contact Instrument Center staff that we can discuss how to do that. What locking is this is a measure of the deuterium NMR signal in the sample. So our solvent is deuterated. And what we're seeing here is it's transmitting constantly at a particular frequency that's been determined by what we put in here, just in a table, and it picks a frequency that's correct for this instrument, and it transmits continuously at that frequency. The sweep tech foot here is sweeping the magnetic field up and down slightly. That's accomplished by means of a room temperature electromagnet that's inside of the superconducting magnet. So as it sweeps up and down, it goes through the deuterium NMR resonance. And so you see where these two lines cross right here in the middle, that is the actual resonance frequency of the deuterium. So what we want to do when we lock is the instrument will look for this resonance condition, and then instead of sweeping the field up and down, it will hold it on resonance at that point. That will make sure that the magnetic field is stable over time. So especially for longer experiments, if the temperature, the pressure in the room were to change, that could cause the superconducting magnet drift to be different and cause the magnet it's locked, it doesn't matter because the two are linked together and one will compensate for each other. In this case, we're just going to do automatic lock. So I can just choose. And it's going to jump up. And then it's going to go into a different mode where it's holding it on resonance. And now, the line going back and forth doesn't indicate any sort of sweep. It's just a measure of the history of the lock signal over time. So if it's going up or down, that means the lock is not stable. Also, if you look at this, the signal to the noise of the signal can give you an indication of how homogeneous your magnetic field is, or how good your sample is for NMR. If the signal's very noisy, then there's a problem with your sample typically. Or if the signal's down at the bottom, then it didn't lock. But then halt their experiment, don't stop their experiment. Because if you stop it, they may lose all the data. So that's not a good thing to do. In this case, we'll wait for the experiment to finish, so the time remaining is done. If there was another thing in holder 1, it would immediately start that. There's not, so it goes and comes up with this window here that says click here to start eject routine. This is probably the biggest limitation of using the automation mode for manual spectroscopy. If it gets to the end of the list here, then it wants to eject your sample, and there's no easy way to cancel it at this point. So the lesson of that is if you want to run multiple things on a sample, you should set them all up in advance before it gets to the end of the list. Otherwise, you're going to have to do setup again. In this case, we're done, so we can click OK. And we're going to get the dummy sample on the depth gauge. Take out our sample. Click out the dummy sample. Now, even though we're not going to take data on the dummy sample, it's important to put it at the proper height. The reason is if it's too far down, it can hit the bottom when it goes in, and it can break. If it's too far up, it may not make a good air seal on the inside there, and then that's one of the main reasons that samples don't eject properly. So you want to make sure it's at the right height before you put it back, and you want to make sure that you put it back before you go on to the next step. So back here, we put back our dummy sample, we've taken out our sample, so we can click OK. On the automatic sample changer, you can leave this window open, and you can use the change user button to change from one person to the next. If you're running manually, you should not leave this window open. The reason is that if you use the change user button, the next person will not be able to delete your experiment from the list, and eventually the list will get filled up. So that's not a good thing. So to be kind to the next person, you should not use this, and you should not leave this open. What we should do, you should go back to the run, and you should click stop current run. Yes, you really want to stop. And then you should go file, close. That will bring back this green icon in the NMR window, and the next person can log in. Now, if you click Spectrum, your Spectrum will be here. If you didn't, there may not be Spectrum here, but you can find it with the browser panel. Expand the list of users, go down, find your username, find today's experiment, double click on your experiment, or you can drag it over into the window, and then you'll have your experiment. Now, we do most of our workup offline, but if you want to look at your data prior to going and working up offline, a couple things you can do. You can use the times 2 and divide by 2 buttons to scale up and down the spectrum. You can use the mouse by clicking and dragging to zoom in on a region. You can use the outward-facing arrows to go back to a full spectrum. And you can close your spectrum without losing your data. It will still be there. If there's a whole lot of experiments open, which there may be if a lot of people are using the instrument, go ahead and close them because too many of them might slow down the program. Okay, so we finished taking our data, we put back the dummy sample, and we've left the instrument in a state that's ready for the next user. We're finished. So this is an explanation of how to do the capillary NMR with manual injection, which you can use any solvent and you can recover your sample, unlike with the automation system. The first step is to make sure that the automation is not running. So come to the screen of the automation system and check on this part right here. If they're all red or bluish purple, they're not running. If there's anything that's green, yellow, or bright purple, something may be running, and you should make sure that everything is stopped before you go to the next step. In this case, everything's fine, nothing's running. So then we can get the kit for the manual injection, which is down here. And we're going to take it over to the magnet and begin setting up the manual injection. Okay, so now we come over to the system and we're going to set up. This thing is to put this bowl under here to collect any of the solvent that drips down as we're flushing various things out of the system. And then we're going to disconnect the line from the automation. So this black line is the input from the automation system and the purple line is the outlet. And then it goes in to the probe, up to the coil, and then back down and out. So we're going to disconnect both sides of it. We'll just unscrew it and try not to jostle the probe too much as you unscrew it. You can just set these aside. And then you sort of twist around on there, it's okay. Okay, so next we're going to connect the lines needed for manual injection. So on the outlet, we're going to connect this line that is symmetrical on both sides. So both connections have the angled fitting on the end. So it's the same on both sides, and it doesn't really matter which way you connect it, and we're going to put that on the outlet. And it doesn't really matter which one we use for the inlet and the outlet on the probe, but typically we use the close one for the inlet and the far one for the outlet. So I'm going to screw this line that's symmetrical on both sides onto the probe. And then I'm going to attach this next line here. This one looks almost like the other one, except that one side has an angled connection and the other side has a flat fitting on it. The reason for this flat fitting is that it is going to attach to the filter. So this white piece here is the filter, and inside there is a stainless steel filter with a little Teflon gasket. we're going to put the Teflon gasket up against the flat end here and tighten it down. So this is the filter on the inlet, and then this part is going to attach to the input of the probe. The advantage of this filter, in addition to allowing us to make sure that the probe doesn't get clogged, is it allows us to put a few different fittings on the end here. So the first fitting we're going to use is this one that goes from a flat connection to a lure lock connection, like on a syringe. And this is what we're going to use to push the solvent out of the probe with air. So I'm going to tighten this down. All these connections should be finger tight. Don't tighten them as tight as you possibly can, but they need to be tightened up that they're not going to leak. Okay, so we have the outlet line, and the symmetrical on both sides, and then this long line that has a angle connection and a flat connection goes to the filter. And then the filter goes to this adapter, which finally goes to the lure lock connection, which is used for syringe. So the first syringe we're going to put on there is this big one, this 10 milliliter syringe. This one we're just going to use to push out any solvent that's in there with air. When you're using this one, make sure never to draw it up while it's attached to the system, because we don't want to suck solvent back into the syringe. We want to keep the syringe as clean as possible. And this kind of funny thing on the end here is to allow us to push it down and lock it into place, because when we push in the air, it's going to build a lot of pressure, so we have to hold it in for a long time in order to push all the solvent out. So this will allow us to lock it into place and we don't have to hold it. Okay, so I'm going to draw it up to 10 milliliters. I'm going to tighten it down onto the connection. And I'm going to push it in. It may have a fair bit of back pressure as you get near the end. It's okay. Go ahead and lock it into place. And now we're going to watch on the other side to watch the solvent come out. It takes a while for the solvent to come out. And what you should see is initially a bubble starts to form on the outlet of the line here. That bubble will grow larger and larger as the air slowly pushes it out. Remember that the lines are very, very small in diameter. This is why we need to always have a sample filter, because it can easily clog the lines. The reason they're so small is that we want all of our sample to be up in the coil and not waste very much sample on the way up. What we're watching for here is what it just did, where air starts coming out. So it's pushed all of the liquid out, and then it sort of spits out the remaining bits of liquid as the air is coming out. So now the probe is completely empty. It's just got air in it. So we can go to the next step, which is to wash the probe out. And typically what we use to wash the probe out is acetone. Acetone is mixable with most solvents, and it dissolves a lot of different materials, so it's a good option to clean out and make sure that the probe is free of any contamination that might have built up in there from previous users. So we're going to use this 250 microliter syringe to flush out the probe with acetone. And we typically use deuterated acetone just because it's convenient and relatively clean compared to lab-grade acetone. So I'm going to put on some gloves here. And I am going to draw up some deuterated acetone. Syringe. It doesn't really matter if there's a small air bubble at this point. Later on, it is important to worry about air bubbles, but for now, if there's an air bubble, it won't affect the cleaning of the probe. So now I'm going to attach this syringe onto the lure lock connection, and I'm going to push the acetone through the probe. Now, there may be a fair bit of back pressure as you push it through. That's normal. Just be aware that if you push really hard, you have the ability to create quite a bit of pressure. You have quite a bit of mechanical advantage here. So what you want to do is push it through so that the acetone comes through at a reasonable rate. You don't want to push it so hard that it starts leaking. If it suddenly gets much easier to push, then you probably develop a leak, and hopefully that is not inside the probe. Just keep steady pressure on it and push the acetone through. It will take a while to flush out the system with acetone. So now we flush acetone through the probe, and we can go back and flush out the acetone with air. So we're doing air, acetone, air. So I'm going to attach the big syringe again. Make sure to remember to draw it up before you attach it. Into place. And we're going to watch the acetone come out. There you can see the bubble starting to form, and it will slowly push its way through the probe. You can wait until the air has pushed the acetone completely out of the probe, and you can tell because the bubbles stop growing on there and air starts flowing out of the end of the capillary. So we're getting there. Okay, that's it. The air is pushed out the acetone, and now the probe is empty again. It's not strictly necessary, but it's often a good idea to then flush the probe again with whatever solvent that you're using. In this case, we're using chloroform, so I'm going to do a flush with chloroform. So bring your solvent, and as long as your solvent is clean, you can use a syringe. Draw up another 250 microliters of your solvent. Attach it on, and flush it through the system. Different solvents have different viscosities. Acetone has relatively low viscosity, so the back pressure will be less on it. The chloroform has a little bit higher viscosity, so we'll have a little bit higher back pressure on it as you push it through. It's going through fairly nicely there. Anytime you're flushing the solvent through, it feels like you just can't push it through, then you probably develop a clog. The clog may be in the filter, hopefully, or in the line, but it's a good idea at that point to contact the shop, and we will try to diagnose what the clog is. This is why it's very important to always filter your samples prior to loading them, because you don't want to ever clog the probe. In this case, things are flowing well, so we'll go ahead and finishing out the flush with chloroform. It may not be obvious, but it's a good idea to push the chloroform out again with air before we actually load our sample. The reason is we don't want to dilute whatever sample is in there, so if the probe is full of chloroform, it may dilute the sample somewhat. So I'm going to go ahead and use air again and push out the chloroform that I just flushed through the probe. And after this, we know that the probe will be pretty clean. So once again, I'm going to wait for the solvents to come out and watch the bubble form on the end of the capillary and wait until the air is pushing down and there's just air flowing through the capillary. If you hear the lock beeping as this happens, that's a good sign because that means that you actually pushed the solvent out of the probe and now the probe has no lock solvent in it and there's nothing for it to lock on, so the lock will beep. That means that it's working and that you're pushing out the solvent. Okay. If you want, like I said, you could do it a second time. You could disconnect the syringe, fill it again, reconnect it, make sure all your fittings are tight, and then pressurize it and lock it into place and flush things through. I'm pretty sure it's pretty well flushed right now. So now the probe is empty, and it's ready for us to load our sample. So to load our sample, we're going to take off the syringe, and we're going to take off this adapter that goes from the filter to lure lock, and we're going to put on a piece that will allow us to load a very small syringe. So this has this green plastic tubing here that a 50 microliter syringe can fit into, and it's going to attach onto the filter. This green part is replaceable, so you can put in a new one. You do want to make sure that it's clean. Likewise, you want to make sure that your syringe is clean before you load your sample. The tip of the syringe and the inlet are probably the most likely causes of contamination from carryover from one person to the other. So you want to make sure all these pieces are clean before you load your sample into the probe. In this case, I'm fairly confident that they're clean, so I'm going to go ahead and load our sample. I have a sample here in a vial. Remember that when you're preparing a sample that it needs to be filtered, just like it would for the automation system, you can use the centrifuge filtration method if you prefer. If you have filtered it for HPLC, that's probably sufficient. But just remember that if you concentrated it down, there's a possibility that it is precipitating, and that, even though it's clean, if it's precipitating, that could clog the probe. So we want to make sure that there's no particulates in the sample at all, even ones that you can't see. Just because it's clear to the eye doesn't mean that it's clean enough for the probe. It could still contaminate or clog the probe. So this sample's been filtered. I'm going to go ahead and whip it in. If you have an extra sample, you can draw it up, but you need to draw up at least 25 microliters of sample. If you have an air bubble, you need to make sure it's at the top, and if you can, you want to try to get rid of it as much as possible. In the cleaning stage, it wasn't really a problem if there's an air bubble, but in here, if there's a bubble in the middle of your column of sample, that's going to go into the probe and put a bubble into the coil, and that's going to screw up your shimmick. So we want to make sure it's free of air bubbles, and again, you want at least 25 microliters of sample. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the syringe into the inlet here. You want to push it down until it hits the bottom, and then carefully you want to tighten it. Tightening this connection here will make it so the syringe is sealed, so when you push in the sample, it doesn't come back out. That looks bad. So now we're going to push the sample into the probe, and if you have 25 microliters, that should be enough to fill the probe, but not exit out of the this outlet here. If you want to be extra careful to recover your sample, you can put a recovery vial on here at this point. In this case, I'm not too worried about it, so we don't need to do that. So I'm just going to carefully, slowly push the sample into the probe, and if all goes well, we will have filled the probe. And this little piece of tape here is so that we can just keep the syringe there while we run. So you can just put it like that. And the surprising thing is your sample can evaporate back through the line. So if you're running for an extended period of time, it's good to put a cap. I've made a cap out of a plug and a union here onto the outlet. Okay, so now the sample is loaded into the probe, and we're ready to go. Okay, now that we've loaded the sample into the probe, we can use Icon NMR to run the experiment just like you would on any of the other Bruker NMR systems. And I'm going to show you how to use the automation system just like we often do with the other systems. So click on automation and log in with your username and password. And you can add the experiment to holder 1. You'll see that the experiments are all the capped NMR experiments. So you can do proton, COSY, HSQC, NOSY. I don't recommend the carbon, but if you really want to, you can do carbon. We're going to do proton here. We should choose a solvent. So we've got chloroform. And you can customize the parameters if you want, just like on a normal system, and put in the title. Okay, next we can submit the experiment and go run, new run, and I'm going to choose the manual lock and shim and click start. Now we've already loaded the sample into the system manually, but because we're using the automation, it thinks that we need to eject and insert the sample. Just don't worry.